Hi, everybody. Welcome to Story Hour. I am your host, Daniel Marcus. My spectacular co-host is Laura Blackwell, and it's Wednesday evening in California, and we're back again bringing you spectacular spoken word speculative fiction. And we bring you work from pretty much every corner of the speculative genre, multiverse, horror, fantasy, hard SF, space opera, your favorite dialect of punk, slipstream, weird, grimdark, dark, weird, and so on and so on. And we love new writers who have just sold their first few stories, as well as award-winning seasoned professionals and everything in between. I started this thing about a little over 6 years ago in the early days of the pandemic, and things were pretty weird out there, not at all like now. And I wanted to just create a place where my writer friends and I could get together and share our work and enjoy a little bit of community, kind of shelter in place against the chaos. Um, and very shortly after I kicked it off, I asked my friend Laura Blackwell to join me in co-hosting, and kind of unbelievably, we've been at it ever since, over 6 years. And fast forward to now, things out there are still pretty weird and trending weirder, but we are still here and we're not going anywhere. And I really believe that we need stories more than ever right now, and we need community more than ever right now. So at Story Hour, we rely on a ancient and venerable tradition, people sitting around the fire telling each other lies. And so every week we continue this practice. We have two writers, about 30 minutes each, narrating their own work. Before we get on with the show, I want to thank the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America for awarding us again the SIFWA Givers Grant, which helps us keep the lights on and keep these rooms open. Givers Fund grants are intended to aid projects that align with SIFWA's mission to promote, advance, and support science fiction and fantasy writing around the world. And this fund is made possible with the generosity of donors from within the community and partnerships within the publishing ecosystem. So thank you, SIFWA. And I am really excited to welcome our authors this evening. We have both our Story Hour repeat offenders. They've been here before. We have SB Divya and Premee Mohamed. And we are going to start the program with SB Divya. SB Divya is a lover of science, math, fiction, and the Oxford comma. She is the award-winning author of the Alloy Era duology and the novel Machine Hood. Her stories have appeared in numerous magazines and anthologies, and she's a former editor of Escape Pod, the weekly science fiction podcast that we all know and love. She's been a finalist for the Nebula, Hugo, Ignite, and Locus Awards. Divya holds degrees in computational neuroscience from Caltech and signal processing from UC San Diego. And you can find out more at www.sbdivya.com. Divya, welcome back. It's great to see you. Take it away.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Should I go ahead? All right. Just a brief introduction for a tiny short story I wrote for the Super Kamiokande project, a neutrino detector over in Japan. And it is called 15 Minutes in the Dreamboat. My mother had her heart broken 3 times in her life. Once by my father, once by me, and once by the world. My mother grew up in the suburbs of Geneva, dreaming of a future at CERN or the United Nations. She first set foot in Japan, in the city of Hida, where my father lived, as a researcher for the newly completed Hyper Kamiokande neutrino detector. In a way, I was conceived inside its vast concrete chamber. That's where my father, a technician, proposed to my mother, who accepted. My mother was a local anomaly, a white particle physicist who spoke fluent Japanese thanks to a childhood love of manga and anime. We spent most of the year in Tokyo, where my mother taught at the university, but we spent summers in Kamioka. For my 10th birthday, my parents snuck me inside the hypercay, which was undergoing repairs. I spent 15 minutes in the dreamboat, so called because it's a physicist's dream locale. The dinghy floated atop 200,000 tons of sapphire blue water, surrounded by 40,000 golden photomultiplier tubes. I was scared at first of the white protective suit that covered my clothes, the small hole that looked like it would swallow us, the way sound echoed inside the chamber. But on the boat, I felt the magic, and I saw it reflected in my parents' eyes. In this place, my mother said, we catch the most elusive particle in our universe, the neutrino, also called the ghost particle. And one day, my father said, your mother will win a Nobel Prize, like Koshiba sensei and Kajita sensei. He spoke with the confidence of a man who deeply loves his wife. A decade later, his prediction came true. My mother's research had found strong evidence that neutrino mass ordering is inverted, which explains why the universe is dominated by matter rather than antimatter. 7 weeks later, my father died from a rare lung cancer. At the time, I was attending college as a physics major who barely understood her mother's work. After my father's death, I started spending late nights at sake bars, having one-night stands, and eventually dropped out. Against a backdrop of shifting ocean currents, furious storms, unusual droughts, and raging wildfires, and a foreground of AI and robots taking on genius-level tasks, I questioned the value of a science degree. I joined a construction crew. I was also an anomaly, a half-Japanese woman in a man's world. But I sobered up, refused to sleep with my coworkers, and built a reputation for competence. I learned the basics of excavation, load-bearing structures, and earthquake resilience. I made peace with my new life and a steady paycheck, then returned to college and got a diploma in civil engineering. My mother attended my graduation with the same smile she used in publicity photos for the Hyper Kamiokande. She expressed no disappointment, but I could see it in the stoop of her shoulders, hear it in the tone of her voice. A few years later, she took an early retirement and moved back to Geneva, ostensibly to be closer to her aging parents, but in truth, because the Hypercave project had shut down. The structure desperately needed repairs, but the water table around Mount Ikonoyama had dropped over decades of severe drought in Gifu, and money to hire workers had also dried up. The world's research funding poured into desperate attempts to deal with climate catastrophe and recurring pandemics. Multinational efforts toward basic science had withered in the face of practical necessity. As I escorted my mother into Narita Airport, I could see the effects of age weighing on her for the first time. When we hugged goodbye, she held me tight, but demanded nothing, not even a promise to visit her. I watched her hobble through security and pass out of sight, and a resolve grew inside me, sturdy as steel. In my 30th year, I returned to Hida for the first time since my father died. I almost didn't recognize it. The bridges that once spanned wide rivers now crossed ribbons of ochre or trickles I could leap across. Beetles had infested the thirsty forests and left them thinned and vulnerable to fire. The drainage canals in town had just no water for the koi, which now remained at their castle pond year-round. While the locals rationed, conserved, fretted, and prayed. Never before, people in town said, not like this. I booked rooms in a ryokan for myself, a real estate investor, the primary foreman for my construction company, and a physicist from the University of Tokyo. The next day, the four of us drove to the Hyperkamiokande detector and toured the facilities. After, we had dinner in Hida with abundant sake, but I didn't sleep with the investor, though he was handsome. 2 months later, my crew began work on refurbishing the detector. First, we spent a year digging out 4 massive tanks, each 1/4 the volume of Hyper K. Then we gradually depleted the chamber, pumping the precious water into the empty caverns. We tested and repaired layers of photomultiplier tubes as they were revealed. When we finished and started refilling the chamber, I bought my mother a plane ticket for the 10th anniversary of my father's death. I hadn't told her about the project, and she never asked about my work. After a day of rest and a visit to my father's grave in Hida, I drove her into the hills along familiar roads. "Why are you taking me here?" she said, her voice quivering. "You'll see." The chamber was 2/3 full when I brought her inside. My crew greeted us and helped us into clean suits. We descended the lift in silence, and I helped her into the dreamboat. Blue and gold reflected from every surface around us. "You did this?" she marveled, her gaze roving. "For you," I said. When at last she faced me, the magic had reawakened in her eyes. The end.
Oh, Divya, that's such a lovely story, and you read it so beautifully as well. Thank you so much. Um, and it's our custom here at Story Hour to just take a beat between authors. Just take a breath, sort of let the previous work resonate, and kind of cleanse our mental and spiritual palates for the next work. So I'm gonna just take a breath, and y'all can do whatever you like for 10 seconds or so. That was SB Divya, folks. Our next wonderful author is Premee Mohamed. Premee is a Nebula, World Fantasy, Ignite, Locus, and Aurora Award-winning Indo-Caribbean scientist and speculative fiction author based in Edmonton, Alberta. She's also been a finalist for the Hugo, British Fantasy, British Science Fiction, and Ursula K. Le Guin and Crawford Awards. In 2024, she was the Edmonton Public Library Writer-in-Residence, and she has taught at establishments including the Banff Institute for the Arts, the Clarion Workshop, and the Carl Brandon Society. She has judged short fiction contests for CBC and Alberta Views magazine and can be found on her website at www.premeemohamed.com. Premee, welcome back, and take it away.
Thank you so much, gang. And thank you so much for inviting me back. And Divya, thank you for that wonderful story. I think we all disappoint our mothers a little bit, and it's nice to circle back around and say, hey, you know, I'm not you. I did something different. I loved that. I loved that story. Oddly enough, the one that I picked to read tonight is also about a research facility, and also surrounded by water. And this is sort of a plotless story. It was written in 2019, published in early 2020 by Apparition Lit, and this is called The Redoubtables. And I will be reading this online, so hopefully everything works. At first, it seems there's been a mistake. Far below us, the satiny, placid water is incapable of hiding a dropped quarter, let alone a disaster. I lean over and touch the pilot's jacket, but this is clearly the precise spot where people ask if he's lost. He speaks before I do. You'll see it in a second. It's so quiet, I hear it twice, once in my headset and once in the world. My stomach lurches as he guides the Eclipse straight up, like the first climb of a roller coaster. The engine remains eerily silent, just a hum under our feet. You can't use helicopters out here, I was told again and again, and I still tried to book one, arguing that it was 1/10 the cost. Why not? You'll see. As we ascend, they come into view through the shallow, clear ocean, littering the sand like so many crucifixes. 3, 4, 5. And then I tear my eyes from the dead helicopters and I see it. Now there is sound. My fast breath in the headset. It's like life, isn't it? I want to say to the pilot whose name I never learned. I want to speak to someone. I'm half delirious, fists clenched in my lap for lack of anything to grab in this edgeless vehicle. It's like life. We had to get higher. We were too close to see the truth. Still rising, the edge of the thing reveals itself. No chaotic meteor strike with lacy edges of ejecta, but a smooth dinner plate of a crater, whitely bereft of life, and in the center, a darkness so profound that it seems astronomical rather than nautical, a black hole from which no light can escape, nor the grains of sand or stars. Time is lost as we hang motionless over the impossibility, as I try, cameraless, phoneless, to record this in my mind. When it returns, we're nearly back at the dock, and my face is crested with tears I don't remember shedding. The pilot helps me down and lets me cling to his arm as my legs shake uncontrollably. Let's just get you on this, he says, and steers me to a bench with the same bored competence of muscle memory with which he flew the hover. I flop onto the hotwood and, at his suggestion, put my head between my knees. Through the dock's gappy planks gleams a much more ordinary ocean. Barnacles, darting fish, floating tufts of wrack. Life, which has not returned to the failsafe zone, and never will. The pilot tells me this will pass in a couple of minutes, and I'll be able to move again, but I'll probably want some sugar. There's a vending machine back at the desk where I had to sign over my phone. Seen this a lot, huh? I manage through my chattering teeth. Oh, sure, he says. Every time. No exceptions so far. No one saw it happen. Scratch that. No witnesses were left. So you end up having to picture it based on the bone-dry descriptions in what we'll all just agree to call the Pierce Papers to avoid any messy litigation and keep me out of trouble with my editor. Here's what you picture. Something copyrighted. That's no moon. Or Bondian, a rocket, a self-guided bomb, a gun, a sword, a spear. We have so many ways to end life, and they all end up looking sort of the same. So that's what we think of, a pointy end. Then light. Light upon light upon light, like those early, terrified précis of nuclear tests. Brighter, they said, than 1,000 suns. But only for a second, and then erasure. Of, most importantly, 11 people. And of island, beach, buildings, air, algae, seabirds, fish, and a tremendous swath of the Earth's crust. But also, if we correctly understand the documentation, and no one's sure that we do, or even can, other things. The space between particles, 100 types of force and spin, and an unmeasured and immeasurable amount of actual time destroyed, lost forever, just taken right out of the universe's accounting books. After that, a second explosion, as if the weapon, upon its first and only discharge, achieved sentience and sapience, realized what it had done, and flung itself from the parapet in instant repentance. But it didn't, of course. As with so many other historical disasters, someone had to give an order, and someone had to press a button. And I am going to go talk to someone who knows about this thing for which we have no words. Flights misalign, then ferries stand me up, and when I finally reach Alexander Wells's house, I have rescheduled 4 times and am a full 2 days late. The trudge up the white gravel walkway to his front door feels like the last minutes of some awful boot camp meant to kill new Marines. His house is high and narrow and seems, to my sleep-damaged retinas, a little too high contrast, like Disneyland. Bricks too red, grass too green. Guarding the door are painfully yellow concrete planters filled with geraniums and petunias. The security camera on its slender gantry weaves around patiently as it tracks my face. Several minutes pass. A fat orange and black bee investigates my boot, still frosted with salt, and finds it unsatisfactory, launching itself back into the air with a little I wonder whether I'm hallucinating from sleep deprivation, and I hope Wells will let me record this interview. I suspect he will. What can they do to me? He said on the phone last night. What do you think they'll do? Nothing, I think. Nothing has happened to the others. Why should he be an exception? 11 people. 11 scientists. Killed in an instant, and no one aware of it till the Pierce papers were released. Then, after the investigation, the appeal, the countersuit, the counter-appeal, a number of civil suits, and 19 months in The Hague, 6 of those people have been declared officially deceased. The other 5 are still missing. No criminal guilt has ever been determined. No jail time has been served. The papers have no commentary on that, on culpability, or perhaps I mean to say evil. They just say, once upon a time, a research facility was built as far in the middle of nowhere as could be. A little cluster of silver and white buildings connected with pedways on an unnamed island. It belonged to a coalition of governments, was organized and staffed under a covert pact, and funded via means more Byzantine than those that funnel cash to cartels, mobs, dictators, and cults. You think, why did no one know about it? But of course the answer is, people don't know about a lot of things, do they? Alexander Wells opens the door and takes my laptop bag and travel mug as I fumble my jacket off. Miss Bissett, so good to meet you at last. I hope the last leg of your travel was kinder than your previous ones. It was tolerable, thanks, I tell him. My first impression is that he doesn't look 85. My second is that he somehow resembles the house, the way some people begin to look like their pets. Tall and thin, high contrast blue eyes, and a face so tanned that it tends towards sunburn near the scalp and ears. White hair, not gray, but really white, like a silk scarf. His voice is rough, his accent leads. No one, not a bloody one, could understand a word out of me when I first moved stateside. Worn to translucency after, he says, 5 decades on our bland, voweled coast. As we chat about his present circumstances, yes, never married, the house is old, the cat is new, his neighbor found her cowering under a dumpster and she's still not learned any manners. I found myself glancing around for clues, pretending I'm Sherlock Holmes. Filled bookshelves, what titles do they hold? Family on the wall. A couple of amateurish watercolors. His? Or purchased? Or gifts? From the same artist? This is how you know evil is banal, the history books tell us. This is how you know. There were baby photos on the walls of the sweet little cottages in Auschwitz, and embroidered curtains. There were operas, ballet performances, a school for the children of the Nazis. There were gardens and playgrounds. It all looks very ordinary when you come across it afterwards. Wells is, or was, do you ever leave it behind? A scientist as well as an engineer. Doctorate in marine hydrogeology, work on designing various labs and containment structures, advisor to a number of generations of politicians here and overseas. His work on high-profile projects was always low-profile, though, he tells me. Not the kind of meetings you'd see photographed. In the kitchen, he offers me tea from a big red pot, Sugar and oat milk appear with rapid ease. His hands are big, bony, the nails clipped to a business-like length. I wrap both my own hands around my mug and will them to stop shaking. The house is cold and bright. Several windows open and the spring cross breeze coming through to ruffle my hair. The unnamed cat is a small wild tabby and sulks when she cannot kill my boot, leaving 2 vampiric pinpricks in the grey leather. Thanks for agreeing to speak with me, I tell him. Thanks for settling for me, he replies dryly. I nod. You have to acknowledge it. Wells didn't push the button, and he didn't give the orders either. If the leaked dossier is correct, he was never called to court, never testified. All the same, he was supposedly at the heart of the research consortium, or he was its heart, the force that moved the blood. I flatter myself to think that he's agreed to this interview because I impressed him by managing to find him, and I say so. He chuckles. Listen, I read those papers too. First thing I thought, someone is gonna come knocking now. Even with a name as common as mine, I thought about changing it, But then I thought, well, let them come, let them ask. I won't seek it out, but I'll talk. You're not afraid of the consequences, obviously. No. Jail's not gonna happen. No job to lose. You think maybe the families are gonna read your piece, come burn my house down when I sleep? Maybe. I've thought that too. This island isn't so hard to get to, not like that one. But you weren't directly responsible. This metaphorical button, they say, had to be pushed, like the nuclear war buttons. They think Knutson pushed it, Adie pushed it, Lee pushed it, all the big names that were on TV. None of them did. I didn't either. They would still hate you, I persist, because you let it happen. You didn't stop it. You're close enough. People settle, he says again. If it's all true, it's not merely a disaster, not merely the justification for a million more conspiracy theories that will ruin countless lives. It also means hundreds or even thousands of people worked for decades to hide both the creation of this facility and of the failsafe that had been constructed next to it. It means hundreds or even thousands of people knew that research was being performed out there in the middle of nowhere, research of such hazard or import that to prevent its dissemination in any way, a super weapon of quite literally physically impossible power would obliterate the entire island and itself. How can we live in a world where such a thing could be hidden by so many for so long? Is that about right? I ask Wells. Have I got that right? You knew about all that from the beginning. You're oversimplifying it, but yes. He pauses and pushes away his empty mug. The first thing you think is, aha, ha, the old man said it, but I didn't make the decisions. You informed the people who made the decisions. Yes, that was my job. I was an advisor. We're getting dangerously close to, I was just following orders here, Mr. Wells. What's wrong with that? We both pause. He doesn't want to interview me, and I don't want to be interviewed, and neither of us wanted to hear such a puerile question. Outside, birds sing with startling nearness. I crank my head to look over his shoulder, spotting the coffee table-sized feeder he's built on a pole in the garden. Some small round item is trying to sing and eat at the same time, with middling success. Wells stares at me, while I refuse to stare at him. Yellow warbler, he says. I was following orders. We all were. Now let me ask you, since I know the internet people got 100 theories of their own, what do you think they were studying out there, Miss Bissett? Those 11 people. I'm ready for this one. Part of me knew he'd ask. Before I left, in fact, my editor said, do you think he'll ask you? We didn't put any money on it. Now I feel both despair and triumph at being right. Bioweapons, I say. Smallpox or anthrax or something else at level 4, or something worse, new, something they were making. There are level 4 containment facilities all over the world, he says. All the protocols are already in place. There hasn't been an incident involving a released infectious agent in 55 years. Try again. A super weapon, like the failsafe, which already existed. Why would they be researching that? To make a better one? It comes out weekly. For a moment, I'm back in grade 6 again. I didn't volunteer, the teacher called on me, and the other kids are snickering. I think, and I hope he too is thinking, there could not possibly be a better weapon than the one they used if what you happen to want to do is not just kill, but obliterate. In what conflict, in what war would you use such a thing? In what war could you want to destroy the quarks of the enemy soldiers and the zone of conflict for the rest of eternity? Remember, don't forget, that lifeless crater in which nothing living will ever return, and which is only bathed with salt water that carries helpless floating things into it that die at once and are carried out. Not radiation, something else. Impossibilities. I don't know, I finally say. What was it? That I won't tell you, he says. But you do know. Yes, we had to know in order to do what was done. And for the first time, I look into his eyes and see the real face of evil, the pale, interested eyes of evil. In a minute, he's going to tell me it was worth it. He'll insist that I cannot say it wasn't because I don't know what it was. We are on two sides of a yawning chasm here. He knows there is nothing I would accept as worth purchasing in lives, and he thinks there is sometimes, and this was one. I'm going to say it again, I warn him. 11 people were working there and died there, were murdered there. How could it have been worth it? The fact that the failsafe was used proves that it was worth it. Does it? Do you think we would have taken such extreme measures if it were not? Do you think we would be so cavalier about the alternatives? We were not monsters. We were left with no choice. Of course you were. Your choice was to not do the research. And now you're telling me you thought it was not only an option, but the only option to sacrifice them for it? Is that how dangerous the research was, that you would murder to keep it secret? The tea shakes in my cup. I keep using the word at him, and he keeps taking it into himself like a medieval saint shot through with arrows that cannot kill him. The birds pause, listening. Tiny feet scrabble seed into the grass. Not to keep it secret, to keep it isolated until it could be safely used, and if it could not be, then destroyed. Yes. To preserve the lives of not just the many now, but the many in the future. He curls his lip over strong yellow teeth. You're very young. I suppose you don't think of the future much. You decided it was that important. Based on what? The research had to be done, and the time it began was the time it had to begin. If anything, Miss Bissett, it began later than anyone would have liked if they had known. We were delayed because we had to create an adequate insurance policy for it, no half measures. Yes, I saw. I went. Did you take any pictures? He says, sounding interested at last. Cameras don't work out there. He sits back, disappointed. Research requires great leaps. It's not like evolution. It cannot make gradual changes over millions of years because the problems it solves are not making gradual changes. They too make great leaps. I'm sorry, but that is frankly delusional. And aside from delusional, the end results of that are evil. I really mean that. I'm sorry you feel that way. I wonder how long he's prepared for this interview. He has just told me he's never witnessed the aftermath, flown over the warm, wide, empty Pacific to the dead place, the failsafe zone, but he must have imagined it. He does not give the impression of a man who has spent 2 years thinking about the last moments of those scientists on that island. Only the damage, I think, only that it worked. He says in a gentle, measured tone, "Science is war. Science has always been war. There are factions, partisans, arms races, trenches, collateral damage, friendly fire, all those things. Not science is like war. Science is war. We fight. And we fight for the same reasons you fight in a war, for the future, not for the present. No, scientists aren't soldiers. They didn't sign up to die. Did they not?" I stare at him. For the first time since I arrived, I find myself speechless. And I had a speech for this. I managed to write it during the second leg of the ferry trip. 4 hours of careful copying and pasting on heaving seas with 2 acupressure wristbands and a great drooling mouthful of ginger candy that hadn't helped at all. I studied the photos, the wise faces, the hopeful faces, the 2 very young faces. I looked at curriculum vitae, I read interviews, I read lists of awards. These were the finest of the finest, the best that humanity could produce, in an infuriating array of unrelated fields from which you could not extrapolate the topic of their collective research. Particle physicists, geologists, geneticists, both human and plant-focused, biochemists, a mathematician working in topology. No techs, no support staff. They were their own little ecosystem. I spoke to some of the families, I begin. His face shows polite interest, no concern. I tracked them down the same way I tracked you down. Oh? Not everyone wanted to talk to me. But some could do nothing else. The father of the young mathematician, Anna Wilczek, a great bear of a man, 7 feet in all directions, collapsed on top of me in tears. "You look like her," he sobbed. "You remind me of her." The photos on his phone. Yes, like me. A slender woman with a long, thin nose and a smiling, thin mouth, dark curly hair, posing in cap and gown. None of them knew that their loved ones were even working at that facility, that they were anywhere near where they were. They just knew that people suddenly went silent. No, of course bloody not. The team all had covers. False emails, tumbled numbers. They knew they could never say a word about the work. And do you know what? No one ever did. Not once. They never had an info breach. I'm shocked. His tired laughter is at my face, not the reaction. Mr. Wells, in the history of what I guess you'd call high-stakes science, I don't know that that's ever occurred before. There's always something. Not for them, he says proudly. Which tells you something else, that it wasn't a leak that doomed that island. It was something else. Something happened, some incident. But there was one thing that no one has ever determined, that the lawyers never proved, that the courts never condemned, not that, I think, bitterly, the answer matters. These murderers are protected by something that is not above the law, but aside from it, and turns the law aside, like a stone meeting a shovel. No one's in jail. I repeat, at the time of this writing, no one has spent so much as an hour in jail, or felt a handcuff touch their wrists. I ask anyway, knowing nothing will be done. Did they know, the 11, about the failsafe? Did they know what would happen if they fucked up? He meets my eyes. I can almost hear him thinking, no one's ever gotten a straight answer to that. Why should I tell you? What difference does it make? To the dead, to their survivors, to the killers? But it does to me. And I stare at him until he says, yes, they knew. I inhale, exhale, wait. A mental self-inspection, patting myself down. Is this the worst thing he said today? Is this the worst thing I've ever heard in my life? I feel as if something is broken inside of me, a rib, a vertebra. He says, because of the valley, they couldn't see it from the buildings, but they knew it was out there. They knew where it was, what it could do, what would trigger it. And they must have known who would give the orders and who would do it. Yes, they knew that. They were told. It was part of the conditions in the contract they signed. They were scientists. They needed all the data. I wait for him to go on. In interviews like this, you are trained to hold silence for the speaker because they have more to say than you do. But I am also reeling, and bright spots of color appear on the ceiling, and the nice white stucco walls, and the sink, and the clock, and the tabby, now watching us from the third chair. I don't know if it's anger. It feels like it might be something else. When he does not speak, I sip from my cold tea to steady my voice. That's not in the Pierce papers. No. But they did know. Despite his invitation to dinner, I cannot bring myself to eat with Wells. He does not seem to mind. If you eat with a killer, his grace seems to say, you become one, which is what happened to me. It's roast beef, he says, and I say thank you, but I will not, and I hope I never see you again. And he says, it was very nice to meet you. Outside, I climb back into my coldly dewed rental car and set the route for town, straight west, into the setting sun. Not much to look at, just a pink, perfectly clear and cloudless spring sky. If he will not imagine the last moments of the 11 dead, I will. Did they see a sunset or a sunrise like this one? No one knows exactly when it happened because of the slice of time that was gone. Seismometers and buoys recorded impacts later, disparate numbers which did not agree with an epicenter. But satellites that could have recorded the precise moment had all gone inexplicably dead. We know the day only. In terms of bracing for impact, holding hands, praying maybe, not many people, but I certainly believed or hoped that they had been caught entirely by surprise. That one moment they had been blithely working away with clear minds, open hearts, even if it was on something evil, and the next moment they were gone without pain. That their agreements had said only reveal nothing and not or else. That they did not wake up every single morning heavy with dread and despair, knowing that they were working not in the warm tropical sunshine, but under the cold hem of death's very robe. But they did, didn't they? And carried on nonetheless. On the highway, soothed by motion, I think maybe they thought they were heroes. They were, at any rate, braver than I could have guessed, braver than anyone knew. And perhaps it was precisely that courage that is the most wrenching sacrifice of this disaster. Not merely that they vanished in silence, that their families could not mourn, that no one could supply answers, but this, that 11 scientists went out there believing they were doing the right thing, knowing from the first moments how it might end. We pitied them. Now I feel both pity and anger, and nothing is to be done. The research they were doing will never be salvaged, and Wells claims it will never be recreated. Worse yet, merely from looking at him, I know that the discovery of their failure will not prevent that covert consortium from trying again. This time, they will not be so arrogant as to let it be witnessed. It will be underground or on one of the lunapods. Maybe the world will know again, maybe it won't. I don't believe Wells or any of the others will read this article. They are not the ones I hope to. The rest of this issue is devoted to the scientists who were killed. And so, to Alexander Wells, I would like my final words to be, it was not worth it, whatever it was. The end.
Yeah. Thank you, Premee Mohamed. And thank you, SB Divya. What a great evening, you two. It's Great to see you again after all this time. Come on back anytime. Seriously. Don't wait for a publishing event. Just shout out and we'll make it happen.
Yeah, don't wait for us to call you. You
Yeah,
can call
right.
us too.
Exactly. Yeah. Um, well, so thanks both of our wonderful authors. Thank you again, Laura Blackwell, for collaboration and partnership and all of that good stuff. And thanks to all of you for coming back every week and giving us a reason to come back here every week. Night, everybody.
Right. Thanks, guys.
Good night. Thank you.